Today we're going to read the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Declaration of the Rights of Man is the preamble, the first part of the new French Constitution at the beginning of the French Revolution. Essentially, after the fall of the Bastille and the National Assembly has this great success, the king agrees to their demands to let them write a French Constitution. The reason I want you to read this particular piece of writing, and in particular the articles behind it, is because I want you to, one, see how all the different philosophers we've talked about, their ideas are entwined in this Declaration of the Rights of Man. But also it's a great comparative piece because, as I've told you, the French Revolution is eventually going to dissolve into a horrific bloodbath, and then at the end of the revolution, an emperor is going to take over, Napoleon. And so you can really see this transition from, in this Declaration of the Rights of Man, lots of liberal, enlightenment, philosophical ideas, freedom and the like. And then they're going to transition towards the reign of terror, the ugly part of the French Revolution, to something quite opposite. So these again are from Aspects of Western Civilization by Perry M. Rogers, excellent book. And we're on page 101. Here we go. The representatives of the French people, organized as a national assembly, believing that the ignorance, neglect, or contempt of the rights of man are the sole causes of political calamities, that's bad stuff, and of the corruption of governments, have determined to set forth in a solemn declaration the natural, inalienable, and sacred rights of man. You can see where they pulled a lot of this from the American Declaration of Independence and Constitution. In order that this declaration, being constantly before all the members of the social body, shall remind them continually of their rights and duties, in order that the acts of the legislative power, who's that sound like, as well as those of the executive power, here we go again, may be compared at any moment with the objects and purposes of all political institutions, and may thus be more respected. And lastly, in order that the grievances of the citizens, based hereafter upon simple and incontestable principles, shall tend to the maintenance and the constitution and redound to the happiness of all. Therefore, the National Assembly recognizes and proclaims in the presence and under the auspices of the Supreme Being, get some religion thrown in there, the following rights of man and citizen. And notice, this is a Declaration of the Rights of Man. It's no coincidence that women are not mentioned here at all. Right? There are women who do some good pieces of writing, like the Declaration of the Rights of Women in the French Revolution, but they are completely marginalized throughout this revolution. And so women, the majority of the population, even in this rhetoric of equality and liberty, are certainly second-class citizens. Article 1, men are born and remain free and equal in right. Social distinctions may be founded only upon the general good. Freedom, equality, right? Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau. Article 2, the aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. A lot of Locke in there too. The principle of all sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. No body nor individual may exercise any authority which does not proceed directly from the nation. And this is essentially, the government is there for the people. Locke, Rousseau. Liberty consists in the freedom to do everything which injures no one else. Hence, the exercise of the natural rights of each man has no limits except those which assure to the other members of the society the enjoyment of the same rights. These limits can only be determined by law. My history teacher back in, I think, 7th grade said, my right to swing my fist ends at your nose. Right? You can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't harm somebody else. Article 5, law can only prohibit such actions as are hurtful to society. Nothing may be prevented which is not forbidden by law, and no one may be forced to do anything not provided for by law. The rule of law. Who said that? Beccaria. Right on. Article 6, law is the expression of the general will. Ooh, a little Rousseau in there, general will. Every citizen has the right to participate personally or through his representative in its formation. Everyone gets to participate, Rousseau, as long as you're not a woman, as long as you're not that half of the population or more than half, which is discriminated against throughout this process. It must be the same for all, whether it protects or punishes. All citizens, being equal in the eyes of the law, are equally eligible to all dignities and to all public positions and occupations, according to their abilities and without distinction, except that of their virtues and talents. Right? So you see more rule by law, Beccaria, and more Rousseau, all citizens participating. Article 7, no person shall be accused, arrested, or imprisoned, except in the cases and according to the forms prescribed by law. Anyone soliciting, transmitting, executing, or causing to be executed any arbitrary order shall be punished. But any citizen summoned or arrested in virtue of the law, shall submit without delay, as resistance constitutes an offense. Rule by law. You can't be arrested unless you've broken a law. But if you have broken a law, you must surrender yourself to the government. Article 8, the law shall provide for such punishments as are strictly and obviously necessary, and no one shall suffer punishment except it be legally inflicted in virtue of a law passed and promulgated before the commission of an offense. Okay, carry again. No unnecessary punishment. All persons are held innocent until they have been declared guilty. Vicaria. If arrest shall be deemed indispensable, all harshness not essential to the securing of the prisoner's person shall be severely repressed by law. Again, no harsh punishments, no punishments that outweigh the crimes. Just enough of a punishment to prevent other people from committing the same offense. Article 10. No one shall be disquieted on account of his opinions, including his religious views, provided their manifestation does not disturb the public order established by law. Freedom of speech. Article 11. The free communication of ideas and opinions is one of the most precious of the rights of man. Every citizen may, accordingly, speak, write, and print with freedom, but shall be responsible for such abuses of this freedom as shall be defined by law. Freedom of the press, another thing they borrowed from the Americans. Article 12, the security of the rights of man and of the citizen requires public military forces. These forces are, therefore, established for the good of all, and not for the personal advantage of those to whom they shall be entrusted. So the military exists for the good of the people, like the government, and you can see Rousseau and Locke in here. Also, the idea that you want the military to be independent from particular interests in the government. And this actually you can kind of see going back to the New Model Army in the English Civil War, which barred people from Parliament as leading the army to try to separate those interests. Didn't work out so well for the English there, but the army was quite effective. A common contribution is essential for the maintenance of the public forces and for the cost of administration. This should be equitably distributed among all citizens in proportion to their means. So essentially this is equal taxation based on how much wealth you have. And remember, this whole revolution kicks off just like the English Civil War, just like the American Revolution. It's about taxes. Article 14, all citizens have a right to decide, either personally or by their representatives, as to the necessity of the public contribution, to grant this freely, to know what uses it is put, and to fix the proportion, the mode of assessment, and the collection and duration of the taxes. So the right to pass tax laws is in the citizenry, right? The government represents the citizens. The citizens should be able to decide how much they pay in taxes and how those taxes are collected. Society has the right to require of every public agent an account of his administration, and that essentially means that anybody who works for the government needs to be able to explain what they do to the citizens. It's what we call transparency. Article 16, a society in which the observance of the law is not assured, nor the separation of powers defined, has no constitution of all. So who says rule by law? Beccaria does. Who talks about the separation of powers? Montesquieu does. Right here it says, if we don't follow these two principles, a constitution is useless. Society has no constitution, essentially. Article 17, since property is an inviolable and sacred right, no one shall be deprived thereof except where public necessity, legally determined, shall clearly demand it, and then only on condition that the owner shall have been previously and equitably indemnified. This is on the one hand, you have eminent domain, and that's the idea that if the public really needs your land for something, you know, in our case, to put in a highway, you know, a railroad, maybe some high-speed rail, you know. If that happens, the public, the government, has the right to take somebody's property, but only if they genuinely need it in a way that they can prove, and only if they compensate or pay the landowner for the land. And the major piece at the beginning of this is people have the right to own property, right? And that's big in Locke, remember. And this is one of the things that Marx, you know, later on is going to disagree with. Good? Questions? Okay, so Declaration of the Rights of Man represents the ideology behind the initial phases of the revolution. This preamble to the French Constitution can be seen as one of the greatest successes of the revolution, you know, right after the fall of the Bastille, when everything was still looking really good for the French people, before this dissolves into a horrific bloodbath. Thank you.